What's happening, YouTube? It's Simon 466 Cards, and today we're going to talk about a couple of things that came across my timeline that I wasn't expecting, and what I think this means for the hobby in a broader sense, and what it means for the sports card market. So, first of all, we're going to start off with baseball card collector, investor, dealer. His business partner has opened a new auction house called Collector Investor Auctions, or CIA, which tremendous branding by the Texas Snowman here. And I have to say, I wasn't expecting the hobby to be opening up a new auction house, given how many different options there are that exist in the hobby today. But I have signed up for it just to see what they're doing. You can see this is their first grand opening auction, and the first one closes in a week. I'm recording this on June the 15th. And like I said, there's already a bunch of auction houses in the hobby. I would say already too many, and so I'm surprised by this news that they're opening up another one. And best of luck to these guys with this. But it was a bit of a shock to me that now would be the time to open up an auction house for the hobby. And so that was interesting. And then a day later, I saw that Mojo Sports here, he is now announcing a consignment service. And so again, there are a bunch of consignment services in the hobby. I don't know that we need another one. And so this also surprised me because, again, it's not a business that I would have expected to be starting fresh now at this time in 2024, but it did happen, right? And so this got me thinking as to why this is happening. Why are these niche auction and selling services popping up now, right? And so I've got a few theories, as I normally do, and so let's go through them. First one is the sports card market is growing, and that means that it's big enough to allow for people to build their own niche markets. And whether that's CIA auctions or Mojo Sports creating his own consignment service or whatever it is that he's building there, because the market is growing, that means that there's room for smaller players to come in and grab a little piece here and grab a little piece there, right? And so that makes sense, right? So that's theory number one. Theory number two is the exact opposite. It's that the sports card market is shrinking, and that means that people who do this for a living need to create alternate revenue streams to make up for the money that they aren't making anymore, right? So if their revenue is down by 10, 20, 30%, they're looking for other ways to make up that lost revenue by doing new things, like creating an auction house, doing some consignment service or consulting on the side, something like that, right? And so I think both of these things are plausible, but they're very, very opposite. And then there's a third theory, which is that both of these things are true. And what do I mean by that? Well, the first thing can be true by saying the sports card market is growing because the number of people in the hobby are growing. And I think this is accurate. Obviously, we are not at the height of the pandemic and the boom there, but with all the stuff that Fanatics is doing to get more eyes on the hobby, to bring it mainstream, to give it that, it's cool, for lack of a better phrase, feel and thinking to the hobby, and to basically give it that Q rating, bring in celebrities in, bring in athletes, that brings more eyes. And just from that alone, I think that the number of people in the sports card market is growing, even though certainly there are people that are leaving, right? So that's the first half of that. But how is the sports card market shrinking or perhaps not growing? It's the amount of dollars in the sports card market. I don't think that's growing. Whether it's shrinking or not, I have some theories. I think it's shrinking slightly, but I don't think it's growing anymore. And the reason for that is when new people enter a market they don't know much about, they're going to be very small dollars, right? They're going to generally, again, unless this is happening during the pandemic, where there's a bubble and that whole thing, and loose monetary policy, yada, yada, yada. Unless that is some black swan event, when people start doing something or entering a new market for the first time, they're not going to dive in head first and just throw money after money after money. they're going to start small and buy a little thing here, buy a little thing there, and see if they like it, right? They're not going to just be like, here we go, here's $50,000, I'm ready to go. And that's generally not how people start doing anything, right? They ease their way into it. And especially with the way that Fanatics is targeting their marketing to kids, right? They're obviously not going to have a lot of dollars to spend on things. And so that's what I mean. There's not a lot of big whales that just coming out of the blue drop a bunch of money and then they're in the hobby, right? It's more of a gradual process, unless you're like Drake. But like, how many Drakes are there? And there is one infamous case of someone coming into the hobby and then dropping a bunch of money and then immediately having regret. And do you remember the case of hockey cards that was from Gretzky's rookie year? And this is the fellow that bought it. He spent $4 million, maybe $3.5 million US, 5 million Canadian, on this case of hockey cards, and basically immediately have buyer's regret. And I just want you, this video came out after he said he had some regrets about winning the auction. I just want you to watch this video, but also look at the reaction on his face. And is this someone that's happy about dumping a bunch of money in the hobby right away? You tell me, all right? You guys tell me. Here we go.
I realized that I wasn't so passionate about, the hockey cards, and that I realized that there are others out there that are much more passionate about this. And I started a journey, I guess, to find, I think, what would be a better home for these cards.
He said...
So, looking at that guy's face, does this guy look like someone who's happy that he jumped in the hobby and dropped a bunch of money on it? I don't think so, right? Because generally, when people start entering a new market or entering a hobby or entering anything, they ease their way into it. They don't just go full steam in, but this guy did, and he already has regrets, right? And so that's why, even though I think the number of people in the sports card market is growing, I don't think the number of dollars is growing, and I think it's actually shrinking a little bit. And so that's what I think is happening. And I think that's what's leading to Mojo and the new auction house being created, is that there are now small little pockets of smaller dollars that need some love and attention, basically. And so by creating their own little niche in the hobby, they can grab that little piece, because it's more, the hobby and the market is more distributed across a bunch of people with smaller dollars rather than a bunch of people with a lot of dollars, which is what was happening during the pandemic and the bubble, right? It's now just everybody's able to carve out a little piece to make a little bit of money here or there. But this is all just a theory. There is a way to test this theory, right? And that is to see what happens at the National. And that is because I was there in Chicago, and I'll be there in Cleveland. And the easiest way to see if the number of people in the sports card market is growing is just to see how many people show up. I can tell you, last year in Chicago, it was rammed. They said over 100,000 people. I'll see how many people show up in Cleveland. And now I understand that Cleveland versus Chicago, it's not quite the apples to apples comparison that we would like. It's obviously smaller cities, so you're going to get less locals coming to the show. And the better comparison will be to see next year's show in Chicago, comparing it to last year's show in Chicago, and seeing what the attendance is like and that kind of thing, right? But until it happens, we at least have this show to see what attendance is like, to measure whether or not the sports card market is growing from a number of people perspective. The amount of dollars perspective, it's a little bit harder to figure out. I'm sure the guys at Sports Card Investor could do a comparison to see the amount of total sports card sales from this time this year to this time last year and be able to put something together. But until then, this is my theory. Theory number 3. Both things are true. The number of people in the hobby is growing. The amount of dollars in the hobby, stagnant. at best. So, would love to hear your thoughts on this theory. This is mostly conjecture. This is kind of my gut feeling slash just kind of with a little bit of a finger on the pulse of the market. That's what I feel is happening. Thank you as always for listening and watching. I'll talk to you all soon. Cheers.